Can I ask you a question? If you're a safety coordinator, who is responsible for safety when you're not there? This is something that I've been thinking about quite often lately because I hear of this quite often. Think about that for a second. Who is responsible for safety when you're not there? If the answer is, well, that's when things usually have a tendency to fall apart, then I've got a message for you. Stop trying to own safety. I'm serious. Just stop trying to own safety. I know that sounds crazy coming from somebody that's been in this profession for so many years. But this is what I've learned over the years. If everyone in your company believes safety belongs to the safety coordinator, you don't have a safety culture. You have a safety department. And there's a big difference because you can do the inspections, you can train, you can write the procedures, you can do the incident investigations, you can remind people about personal protective equipment until you're blue in the face. But you cannot personally watch everybody every minute of every day. And you shouldn't have to. So in this video, I want to talk to you about 3 things that have to change if you're serious about turning your safety culture around. And the first one may be the hardest for the safety coordinator really to accept. Safety isn't yours to own. It's yours to lead. Think about that. Here's the reality. If you're a safety coordinator and everybody in your organization thinks safety is your job, that's all you do, that's your job, you're going to spend your entire career chasing problems. And you'll never get ahead of them. Truly, you won't. Think about that. An employee sees a trip hazard, hey, call safety. A supervisor sees somebody without their PPE, call safety. Safety will deal with it. Management hears about an unsafe condition. That's what we have a safety department for. They'll handle it. Pretty soon, you're not building a safety culture. You're running a safety department. And like I said, that's a huge difference. Your job as the safety coordinator isn't to personally make every employee safe. Your job is to build a system where people actually take responsibility for their own safety and the safety of the people around them. That's a completely different job, right? Number 2, supervisors have to own safety. They do. Now, let's talk about the people who have the biggest influence of what happens every day on the production floor or out on the job site, and that's the supervisor. Because supervisors control the work. They decide how the job gets done, they set the expectations, and they're usually right there when the work is actually happening and taking place. But that's where things can get a little difficult. The safety coordinator says, we need to slow down and do this safely. And then all the while the supervisor is thinking, I've got production to meet. And now safety and production become 2 competing priorities. That's not a safety culture, that's a conflict. The supervisor actually needs to understand something very important. Safety production is your responsibility too. If a supervisor sees an employee doing something unsafe, they shouldn't be thinking, hey, I'll get safety to handle that. They should handle it, right? And right then, right there, that's ownership. And here's something else. If supervisors aren't reinforcing safety expectations, your safety program is going to struggle. No matter how good your policies are, you can have the best safety manual in the world. But if the supervisor ignores it on the floor, it don't matter much at all. Number 3, senior management has to make safety matter. And then we get into the upper echelons, senior management. Now, I understand senior management is busy. They are. They've got budgets, they got customers, they have employees, production, deadlines, problems coming to them from every direction. I'm not suggesting the CEOs need to spend all day talking about safety, but management has to make one thing very clear to everybody. Safety matters here with us. And employees figure that when the employees figure that out by watching what management does, what management says, and not what just a poster says, but what management does. If production is behind schedule and management looks the other way when the safety rules are ignored, employees notice that. Employees see what's going on. If a supervisor stops production because there's a serious hazard and management supports that decision, employees notice that as well. Employees think then they're serious. Management doesn't have to own every safety issue, but management has to create an environment where everyone understands that safety is part of doing their job. So the safety coordinator's real job? So if you aren't supposed to own safety, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to lead it. You're supposed to lead safety, not own it. You're supposed to build the program, educate the people, identify the risk, help supervisors understand what good safety actually looks like. Give management the information they need to make good decisions. And most importantly, get other people involved. When you see a hazard, don't automatically become the person who fixes the hazard. Sometimes, ask the question, who owns this area? And then ask, what are you doing about this situation? That's how you start transferring ownership. Because every time you personally solve the problem that someone else should own, you may actually be making your job a lot harder than what it needs to be. And this brings me to something else that I've seen throughout my career. When a good safety coordinator leaves, they leave sometimes because of doing just that, having to take on everything. And then people wonder why. They say, we had a good safety coordinator. Why did he leave? Sometimes it's because they just got a better opportunity. Yeah. But sometimes they're actually exhausted. They're tired of being the only person pushing safety. And I have seen that within the last few months. Great safety coordinators being pushed out virtually because they're having to own safety. They're tired of supervisors saying things like, well, that's safety's job. They're tired of management saying, we support safety. But when production gets tight, safety kind of becomes negotiable. And eventually a good safety coordinator starts asking themselves, why am I fighting this battle all by myself? And that's when you lose good people. Not necessarily because they don't care about safety. No. It's because they care too much and they're tired of carrying something that they should never have been theirs alone. So the big question. So let me ask you this. And I want you to really think about it. Do you have a safety culture or do you have a safety department? There's one way to find out. If the safety coordinator didn't come to work tomorrow, would safety continue? Would supervisors still correct unsafe behaviors? Would employees still report those hazards? Would management still ask about safety? That's a good one. Would people still stop and think before they started a job? Then you may not have a safety culture at all, really. You you may have a safety coordinator carrying the entire culture on his back, and that's not sustainable. So, in closing, stop trying to own safety. Own the process, own the program, own the education, but give the responsibility for safety back to the people who actually control the work. The employees, the supervisors, the managers, senior leadership. Everybody has a piece in this, because safety isn't something that the safety department does to people. Safety is something an organization does together. And when everybody understands that, that's when you stop having a safety department and start building a safety culture. Hi, again, I'm Tim, and this is JoCo Safety Solutions. And remember, safety is always first. Safety isn't one person's responsibility. It's everybody's job. Really. Now go have that conversation with your people, with your supervisors, with employees, with senior management. Go have the conversation. And when somebody sees something unsafe, what do they say? Call safety. And that's where the problem actually begins.